I'm Stephanie Wilson. Welcome to Freedom Over Fascism Live. And I have Melissa Corrigan with me. You probably already know her, but I'm going to kind of set it up anyway. First, for everybody, Melissa and all the other veterans out there, happy Veterans Day. Melissa is the publisher of Counterstory Media on Substack. She's a Navy veteran, a freelance writer and thought sharer and philosopher. She explores the themes of parenting, political ideologies, life as an adoptee, and LGBT allyship and family. She's recently been covering the surveillance state and the cameras that enable it, ongoing protests in DC, the naval buildup in the Caribbean, the NDAA, and the debacle of whatever night it was. 2 nights ago, last night, I don't know. Time doesn't mean anything. Yes. So, and as you all know, today is Veterans Day, when we honor service members alive or dead. Memorial Day is for the all dead ones. It began as Armistice Day, commemorating the armistice of First World War, which was signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. And the United States changed it to Veterans Day in 1954 to honor all of our service members. So before we get into all of the actual stuff going on right now, could you tell us a little bit about your backstory? So if you could tell us your backstory a little bit, and then we can go where the conversation takes us.
Sure. The backstory is a lot. I was a college dropout. I went for a semester at USC when I was 18 on a music scholarship. A lot of people don't know that. And I played drums. I was on the drum line at the USC marching band, and figured out pretty quickly that, music wasn't going to be my thing because I didn't want to be a music teacher. And that's really all you can do without going into hyper competitive professional music world. And
one moment, I will like to let you know, my father is an SC alum. And yes, and my original middle name is Stephanie Cherish, and my brother is Scott Charles.
Wow.
So yes. So I am familiar with SC and the marching band.
Yes. So I was taking a year off of college and 9/11 happened. So I figured, I guess this is our moment, like Pearl Harbor. So I went and enlisted, and it took actually so many people from our generation enlisted at the same time that it took a year to have a female. But I should back up and say so many women came forward and enlisted that it took me a year. I had to wait a year to even get a bed in boot camp because there were so many women that had enlisted. Right. Wow. So I was put into a sort of holding program where we were supposed to behave ourselves and work out and exercise. And I didn't do any of that. I took the opportunity to drink a lot and have fun before I went off to boot camp. But I did. I served 4 years in active duty Navy and 1 year in the reserves. I was so incredibly lucky that I was not deployed to a combat zone. I was on the USS Eisenhower, and then I worked for a brief amount of time at the telecommunications station, Naval Station Norfolk. And then I finished out my time with decomming the HC-4 Sea Stallion helicopter squadron, which was a fun process to watch how exactly the Navy decommissions a unit like that. So it was such an exciting time to be in. It was such a emotionally tumultuous time to be in and to be involved in the war in Iraq, and to have a steadily growing awareness of what we were doing and the moral and ethical implications of a lot of what we were doing. And that kind of led directly into a lifetime of activism work when I met a wonderful young woman on my ship that was openly gay, and no one gave a shit about that. She was an E5, very decorated, one of our best electrician techs on board. We got a chief that began harassing her. And because this was in the era of don't ask, don't tell, she had no one to go tell. She couldn't, report this guy for harassing her specifically on the basis of her sexuality. And so one day she went home for, I think, Thanksgiving it was, and just didn't come back. And I watched her throw her entire career away over one person. And I was absolutely livid. And so I began working then sort of under the radar, because we're not supposed to do that when you're active duty, but I began working with organizations that were working to overthrow Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And so I threw myself into that as soon as I got out, and was super excited for us to achieve that. And that was a remarkable, and that rolled into working on marriage equality, which rolled into working with Occupy, which rolled into Black Lives Matter. And here we are.
Wow. That's great. And so take me from Black Lives Matter to now. Were you always writing and investigating? Were you
on and off through the years? I was a single mom for 6 years there, and didn't have a whole lot of time to invest in stuff like that, and definitely had to prioritize my day job. But I started working with the Examiner. I was the Charlotte Examiner. So I reported on Occupy. That was my first time actually covering from a journalistic standpoint, which was a learning lesson. Also, I learned a lot about how to cover stuff like that, and how to present when you're an activist at heart but acting in a journalistic role, how to present things and fight your bias. And I had a lot of
use your values. I mean, that's important.
Right. So during Black Lives Matter, a lot of stuff I did was behind the scenes because I had a baby at home. I had just had my daughter, and so my best friend was out in the streets and doing that. And so I supported her fully, and worked with a lot of organizations behind the scenes on organizing and stuff like that, not so much on the forefront of it. But through the years, I mean, I've taken my kids. My son's first protest he went to at 6, and he's trans. So at that time, he presented as a girl, and he had a tiny little armband that said "My Body, My Choice," that he still got in his scrapbook. And we went to the State House in Virginia, and it was a silent protest. So we all stood silently as they were discussing reproductive legislation about reproductive health care. And it was, from that moment, he has been aware of the powers that sort of shape his existence. And obviously through his transition, that became even more astute and pronounced to him, in how much people way above his head and way above any of our heads control the quality of our life and the real freedoms that we're able to exercise. So now all my kids are incredibly politically active, and I have been accused by various relatives of theirs of radicalizing them, but I don't think it's radical to simply exercise your constitutional rights. None of my kids are out here being violent or storming the streets or anything like that. So yeah, so
patriotism. It's not radicalization.
Yeah, I like to present them their options. I don't force them to do anything with me. There were many years through their early teenage years where everything your parent does is not cool. So the activism was not cool. So they came around. So now they are, some of my kids are like more politically active than I am at this point, in terms of going out and being in the streets and everything.
Well, that's pretty exciting, because mine has just said that he wants to learn a little news. And when I talk about stuff at the dinner table, he does not want to talk about it because he wants to be sheltered. We're in Massachusetts, so he
Yeah.
gets to be sheltered. And he just, like, when I went to No Kings, he's like, "You're not making me go, are you?" I was like, "You will get there when you get there." And
Yeah.
the funny thing is, like, all his friends are trans, almost. Like, he's at a school where so many people are
Yeah.
trans. So you managed to raise activists, which is awesome. And so I wanted to talk to you about some of the things that you've been reporting on, because maybe most of the people here know, but a lot more people will listen to this on audio podcast. A couple of things that you've recently been reporting on, I think, is absolutely not known widely. And one of those is the surveillance state, the flock cameras.
Right.
And one is how much buildup we have in the Caribbean.
Yes. Yes.
So which would you like to tell us about first?
Well, I'll talk about flock because it's right here. And I thought it was pretty cool. I literally just caught the tail end of a podcast out of Denver. Denver is fighting sort of the same fight we are. People are just starting to wake up. They had flock safety cameras installed all over Denver, kind of the same way my city did. They just made an executive decision at the city level and put them up, and they didn't consult citizens, or there was no education, there was no information campaign about what they are and what they aren't. And so people in Denver are up in arms as well. I caught the tail end of a podcast where they were talking about how are we going to get rid of these flock cameras. So I think it's great that cities around the country, citizens are starting to fight back against having these. So Flock Safety is a vendor. They call themselves a vendor. I feel like they're a little bit more, but they make the automated license plate reader cameras. And the way that they're different than past vendors that have sold to law enforcement is that they have a dashboard. So in the past, vendors would sell you your camera and you would have access to that information, and that was it. It was just a vendor selling cameras. But Flock is not quite that. And Peter Thiel likes Flock. There is a little bit of a connection there. He was part of the Founders Fund that was the think tank that incubated Flock, and he expressed a very keen interest in flock safety. And I'm not sure, it's not public knowledge what happened over the course of that incubator, but Peter Thiel was asked to leave. And since then, he's retained a really keen interest in the company, albeit from a little bit a touch removed. But Flock Safety has a dashboard called Nova, and that dashboard is capable of plugging in tons of different streams of information. They can plug in the regular security cameras. They can plug in other types of cameras that are owned by law enforcement, like the body cams or the dash cams in their vehicles. And they have the capability to add other types of data, including and up to your social media profile. So Flock likes to sell themselves as, hey, we're just a vendor selling license plates. I don't know what a social media profile has to do with a license plate. So clearly, they are building out and working on the sort of an all-in-one dashboard where eventually law enforcement or any interested party, because these cameras are also sold to HOAs and other private individuals and companies. But they're working on a dashboard where you will be able to pull up a complete profile on someone, including down to their social media profile, which, if you know anything about, the People's Republic of China, they like their social scores for individuals. So this is exactly the type of framework and software that leads to that inevitable conclusion.
So this networked system of cameras and social media profiles and body cams, and that all links up and somebody we don't know who is watching to
Part of the issue
um
with the rollout of it is, like, here in Norfolk, what the lawsuit is about is, for instance, I found out about these cameras when I pulled out of my neighborhood and there was one there. And it
mm,
just appeared overnight. There was no notice. I am someone that reads our local news and pays attention to local news and city council and like everything, and they just appeared. It was just an executive decision on the part of the police chief, that was co-signed by our city council, and they just went ahead with it without informing, and not just informing the citizens. They did not have a data policy or plan in place when implementing the use of the cameras, which just by IT standards is insane. It's inappropriate. It's really crazy to just um, start that process without a data plan in place. So there were about 6 weeks that we know of for sure where at least 6 law enforcement officers accessed those cameras with absolutely no guardrails whatsoever. There was no policy, no plan, no anything. And since then, the lawsuit has exposed in discovery, because then again, Flock wants to say, we're just a vendor and we don't keep information. And the state law says that you can only keep that data for 30 days. So the attorney demanded in discovery to see how many times the plaintiffs were tracked. And when that came back, one was tracked over 500 times and one was tracked over 800 times. And the kicker is they were able to provide that information to the court and it went well beyond 30 days. So how did you have the information if you're dumping it at 30 days? So it's kind of like
right.
they immediately exposed that they're not following the state law. It was just passed in July. And so, yeah, it's a situation where a lot of the citizens here are of the mindset that, oh, they're just like all other law enforcement cameras. If you don't have a problem with traffic cams or the easy pass cams for the tolls, then why do you have a problem with that? And it's simply an education thing. This is the point at which we're at, because unfortunately it does look like this lawsuit is not going to go the way we want. So at this point, we have to engage in an education campaign for the citizens of our city to be fully educated and informed. And I have a meeting to actually go talk to someone with our local public radio station about embarking on that education campaign, because I believe if the citizens know the full extent of what they do, they'll do like they did in Evanston, Illinois, and like they're doing in Denver, and demanding that they take the cameras down.
So a little while back, you told us about how these cameras tracked a woman as she went between states. Can you talk a little bit about what the situation was, how many cameras caught it, who was cooperating with whom?
I'm gonna tell
People.
you the way that I tell old white people in my town. This is how I tell them. So
Okay.
in one state, it's illegal to recreationally use marijuana, right? So a guy drove across the state lines to a state where it was legal to use marijuana, and he did that recreationally. And the next day, he was not under the influence of that drug. The next day or a couple days later, he drove back home. And when he drove back home, he was arrested by the police in his home state, citing his use of recreational marijuana, which is not legal in their state. And when I tell white people that, old white people, they're like, that's insane. That's ridiculous. How on earth is that legal? And what they used was 83,000 flock cameras were used to track that person all the way across state lines to do their activity and all the way back. So that already seems like a breach of federal law. Like that would require a federal warrant to get surveillance across state lines. No warrant was issued. And here's the kicker. It wasn't marijuana. It was an abortion. They tracked a woman across state lines. And when I say that to these old white people, they're a bit taken aback, because they don't like abortion and they don't want abortion. But when you look at the fact that it's legal in one state and not in another, and you tracked a person across state lines in order to prosecute them for something that's not illegal in the state where they received it, and you use marijuana as an example of that, it truly shows the absurdity and the invasion of privacy, the invasion of Fourth Amendment rights to warrantless surveillance. So that's a way that I've been able to have that conversation with, you know, the people that actually live in this city and explain to them how these cameras are being used. Flock also claimed that they would never be used for that purpose ever. And if a law enforcement officer put anything in the little box where you have to put for the reason about abortion, they would immediately, well, that became public. And what was in the box was had abortion, comma, searching for female. So they were allowed to use it for exactly that purpose.
So they figured out somehow with whatever data that a woman was pregnant, decided to track her through several states using 83,000 cameras for her journey. And did she get arrested when she got back?
I'm not sure if she was arrested or has been arrested yet, but that was the ultimate goal. I don't know if they were successful in. I have to feel like any judge worth their salt, but we're talking about Texas, so. But I have to feel like any judge worth their salt would see that that was interstate surveillance, and that would require a federal warrant. And if you didn't have one, how can you present that evidence without the, you know, like I feel like that would have to be thrown out. But I do need to follow up on that case and see if she was actually arrested and charged.
Yeah. So not only would it have to be cameras, it would have to be somehow knowing someone was pregnant.
Right.
And then
that part of it.
Whatever skeleton system is like networking all of these things together. And then you add in Palantir for some things and Starlink, and like you start to wonder also you know, Google getting your information out of your Gmail to train their Gemini.
Right. There's so many layers to it. And now they've added Ring cameras now feed into the Flock dashboard. So this really, really pissed me off. And I got into a rant about it the other day on the internet, and I won't do that again. But what irritates me,
I bet you I can get you into a rant about something today.
But what irritated that is such a because I've been very cautious about the monitoring on me and my family, especially with like what I write about and everything. And when they added Ring cameras, it was so like a punch in the gut, because our neighbor directly across the street is a Trumper and has a Ring camera pointed at my front door. And it's so frustrating, because I feel like as an American, a red-blooded American, if you know that this device on the front of your house is surveilling your neighbors without their consent, turn the device to just look at your door, you know, reposition the device. If you don't mind Uncle Sam looking at your comings and goings, that's on you. That's fine. But I think that there should be a realization that if you are participating in government surveillance of your neighbors, that's kind of a shitty thing to do. And you're kind of a piece of shit if you're aware of that and you choose to continue doing it, that you're not being a good neighbor. That's the nice way I'll say it.
Yeah. I mean, no, you're not doing it. I mean, speaking of, you know, I could see how you'd be really scared. In fact, my mother-in-law decided she wanted to take the whole family on a vacation to Bermuda, not far from you. And I was like, really? Do I really want to leave the country now? Yeah. I'm public. What's going to happen? Like, so this leads me to, so she decided on the U.S. Virgin Islands, which are in the Caribbean. And It's not for sure yet, but I know there's a lot more going on
Yeah.
in the Caribbean than just people hanging out at resorts
Yes, that's a good segue to
in
our next.
the islands. I wasn't planning that segue,
Yeah,
but
that's a good
you
one
know.
because now there are 18 of our Navy ships somehow parked in the Caribbean over the holidays. Or
So somebody, was it Morgan, said that they entered Venezuelan waters.
oh, did they?
I'm going back in the chat.
I'm trying so hard to keep up with everything, and it's since January, it's just a constant fire hose of headlines and
Right.
information. So, like I saw a good headline this morning. I saw that ICE is being withdrawn from parts of Chicago, so that's a good thing. That's something to celebrate. Um, but no, I hadn't seen that we had entered Venezuelan waters, although I'm not surprised.
Right. You know, first, if you could, I know when you were on with Nick last week, you went through all of the ships and the numbers of troops, sailors, Marines on the ships.
Right.
So, can you just give the number of ships and the number
Right.
of
It's 18 ships
service
and
members?
15,100 service members. And part of the most interesting part of that is first of all, they pulled the Ford strike group. That's not just the Ford, that's the entire strike group, which is like 11 ships, I believe. So now we don't have that presence in the Med. They pulled them from their Med cruise. A Med cruise is something where we continuously have a presence there. It's sort of a thing when you join the Navy. You know, if you get assigned to a aircraft carrier or one of its strike group ships, you're going to do a Med cruise. It's something that we continuously keep a presence in that area. And so that's the first sort of alarming thing, is to pull the entire strike group from the Med. So now that leaves a vacuum there. And then pulling them down to the Caribbean. Well, they're being pulled to the what's called the Southcom area. So the Southcom covers Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. They are all sort of cloistered in the Caribbean right now, just north of Venezuela. And the other interesting and curious thing is that there are several amphib ships that carry Marines. Now, none of us are going to know for sure if there are Marines on board. I have a source in the DoD that does say there are Marines on board at least one of those ships. So why are we carrying Marines? Because I was in the Navy and we were on a ship that occasionally carried Marines, but we only carried Marines when they needed to go somewhere. We're like an Uber for Marines when they have to go somewhere. So it's really not normal or typical to have Marines on board an amphib ship if they're not serving a purpose and not about to go somewhere. So I found that.
And Marines are generally the first strike
Correct.
force.
Right.
Correct.
As well as there's another ship, I won't give the name of it because for OPSEC, but it is essentially a ship that the Navy owns that looks like a cargo ship. It's sort of a covert ship. It looks like a cargo ship, and it carries 150 special ops forces, and that ship is there. So it's all the pieces look as if they are planning a ground invasion backed by the Navy.
Right. And the admiral in charge resigned a couple last month too, didn't he? In April, I went to a conference for a podcast group I'm a part of called the Democracy Group. And they basically just had us meeting each other, and they brought in a few guests to talk to us. And one of the guests was Ben Rhodes, who was Obama's advisor in various capacities, but mostly for national security, at least toward the end. And I got to be one of a couple people who were interviewing him. And it's on my Substack if you want to go find it. I mentioned something about, what he thought the lengths that this regime was going to go to internationally. And he said, with all of the conversation around Greenland at that point, Venezuela hadn't even entered the picture. He would be very surprised if we didn't invade someone somewhere because Trump wants to expand the United States.
Right.
And wants to get more colonies, whether it was going to be Greenland, whether it was going to be Panama, Venezuela. I mean, who knows where else he has his eye on.
Well, he was obsessed with Panama, and now we know that BlackRock bought both ends of the Panama Canal months ago. So it's crazy to think about how much has happened in 11 months. And then when you put together all these different pieces, I don't think he was successful in Greenland because the Greenland people told him to go fuck himself. And they were absolutely not going to take that. Same with Canada becoming the 51st state. So he's turning his attention to South America, where America has constantly over the years, meddled and done their little dirty deeds to extract whatever we wanted and then left governments in turmoil. So he's turning right back to that same old tired shit of using
with the bonus of oil.
Right. And using South American countries that have instability in their government right now that provides a weakness for him to exploit. And it just enrages me that there are men and women sitting on these Navy ships away from their families for the holiday with no idea of when this is going to end or what their purpose is there, because that feels very Iraqi to me. That feels like the Iraq war all over again. And I'm willing to bet if you went even older than me and asked a Vietnam vet, they would say the same fucking thing. This is the same old tired thing that they use our young men and women to play these little games at. Right now, it just happens to be their own personal game of battleship. So we're going to put all of our ships out and see what happens. And these are American citizens that are just sitting there for an indeterminate amount of time, don't know what goes on. And like I said, when they did that to us with Iraq, it is extremely demoralizing to not know when you're coming home, what you're doing, what the purpose of you being there is, particularly a little later in the game when we started realizing there weren't weapons of mass destruction. We were lied to. What did we do under the guise of lies? Yeah.
Right.
So I have to think that there are a lot of people on those. I know I have a couple of contacts in the DOD who are relaying that sort of thing, and the morale is shitty and people are pissed and they don't know what they're doing. There's weird stuff going on, like being asked to sign NDAs. If you're in a position on a ship to see something that will require an NDA, you already have a security clearance, and that's a standing NDA. So signing an additional NDA on top of that. Somebody asked in the CIA false flag situation. I believe it. Maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I fully fucking believe it. The Venezuelan president said he's claimed that they have taken some CIA operatives in custody and has claimed that there was going to be a false flag attack on the Gravely. And there's a couple reasons why I'm not super opposed to that theory or that claim. And that is, I'm starting to have lots of questions in my mind about the USS Cole. The USS Cole happened October 12th of 2000, and a small fishing boat pulled up alongside and blasted a hole in the side, killing 17 sailors and injuring, I think, 38 more. And I have to say, all of that sounds pretty clinical and history and dry, but when you're in the Navy and something like that happens and there's a breach in the hull, you have to act within seconds. And we have lots of drills to practice this. But what that means is if your shipmate is down in that hole injured, you have to close them in. You have to close the hatch to prevent any more flooding of the space. And so what those young men and women went through that day, it's not just 17 guys died and 38 didn't. It's that a lot of people had to make unconscionable decisions that day that probably still haunt them to this day. Um, when I get stories from veterans, I have a publication on Medium called Served that is just the stories of veterans. And I still have stories that guys won't publish that I just have, and they're not ready. Or some of them are Vietnam vets that have asked me to wait until they die to publish those stories. And what happens on Navy ships is when you're in a confined space like that, injuries are gruesome, devastation. And when you're a survivor of that, it's just particularly gruesome, what happens in close quarters like that. And so when I look back at the Cole and what happened, that was October of 2000. And I remember it being on the news vaguely, but I don't remember any public outcry over. There was no, oh my God,
there was a little bit, but yeah.
There was a little, but not like, yes, we need to go to war with Al Qaeda for blowing up our Navy ship. It was like sad, but not, not enough to get the public support for a ground invasion. And lo and behold, 11 months later, we have planes flying into the World Trade Center, and that did it. That was the ticket. So when I look at the Gravely, you've got an exhausted crew. They have been fighting. They fought the Houthis off the coast of Yemen in the most active naval battle since World War II. They were engaged in heavy, heavy active battle for 90 days at least. So those guys got home and were sent right back out on this mission. They are tired. And tired people are more likely to miss something on watch and to make mistakes. I don't think targeting the Gravely for a attack like that, a false flag, would be an accident. I think it would be a decision made on purpose. So we will never know. We have to wonder what happened to these CIA operatives that were taken hostage by Venezuela or arrested, and we will probably never know what truly happened, but I am inclined to believe that they definitely intercepted some type of activity there that
would give
maybe
the United States a reason to cost to invade Venezuela. Fan-fucking-tastic. Let's have really a moment of zen in the middle of all of this. Robert asks, what are your thoughts on President Obama's surprise visit with the veterans honor?
I thought it was absolutely beautiful. And also it is pathetic that he has to step up to take the actions that a sitting president should be engaging in. The commander-in-chief should be doing stuff like that on Veterans Day and meeting a plane full of veterans. And Obama will forever be a class act, and the way that he showed respect to veterans and active duty, it's just one thing that Obama did that people talk about in a negative light, which I never understand, but they talk about how Obama utilized drones and drone warfare. And first of all, he's the first president that had the option to do that because the technology was new when he was the president. But what I understood as an active duty military member is that Obama used drones for precise attacks where he chose to not send in teams of human beings. He chose not to send us in and instead use those drones. And also out of that, he was able to kill a lot less civilians. There were a lot less civilian deaths, including children. I'd have to go way back in my notes because I was working on something months ago about this. But I remember looking at the number of civilians killed under Bush and under Obama. And it dropped drastically because drone warfare is extremely precise and strategic, and you can avoid civilian casualties and you can avoid military casualties on our end by using them. So that's something that like a ton of conservatives will throw in my face, is like, oh yeah, look at Obama and all the people he killed with drones. And I'm like, but he was killing targeted specific individuals and not decimating entire hospitals and schools and cities and killing hundreds of civilians to be able to take out a specific target. That's a good thing, you fucking idiot. Like,
Right.
what do you
Well,
mean?
I think that, because of just the popular culture and movies about being a soldier and or Apocalypse Now to Saving Private Ryan, all of those, besides the ones before that were like really, really, really glorifying war. I don't think your average civilian has any clue what an urban war looks like,
Right.
and how many people get killed and how many buildings get flattened. We see some of that footage of that in Ukraine. We see that in Gaza. We did that in Iraq. And I think we finally realized war not good, but only some of us, because
Right.
Trump is not in the war not good camp. But the idea of being a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, space guardian, I don't know what they're called now.
Space cadet. I don't know what they're called. I think they literally are called space, actually. I don't know. I just think of Spaceballs. Like every time we talk about Space Force, I think about Spaceballs.
Well, when they did it, I was like, what the fuck? We have NASA. Like,
yeah,
we have the Air Force. We have that shit. But anyway, and I think that even though the, popular culture, but their movies or books is raw, going all the way back to Al Qaeda on the Western Front about World War I, there's still enough of an element of like heroism that people think, oh, well, these here, yes, all the people who fight our wars are heroes, including you and Nick and all the people that we know of. And I'm sorry, I can't name it, everybody, my dad too. But that it's not like, it would be much better not to have a war in the first place than to have people have to be heroes and live with whatever they had to do to earn that.
And you reach those moments there where, like I said, I was so incredibly lucky that I was never in the combat zone, but a couple of times I was in support units, and one of my friends got sent. So for a while there, around 2005, 6, the Army started running low on people. So they weren't getting the enlistment that they needed. So they started pulling from the Navy. So they would put up lists on the mess decks, and it was a lottery. And if you were married or had a kid, you weren't in it. But if you were single and you weren't like mission critical to the ship, you were going in the lottery. So a friend of mine got pulled, and she went into Baghdad for 9 months. And when she came back, she had a big gnarly scar on her neck. And you never want to be that one to be like, oh my God, what happened to you? And so it took her a couple days, but she said that a child shot her, and she had to shoot him or he was going to kill her. He was going to shoot her again. How do you live with that in that space? And when you talk about urban warfare, in especially in countries that have been engaged in warfare, either domestically or with their neighbors for hundreds, if not thousands of years, honestly. These kids are built different. You know what I mean?
Well,
A
so
lot of
many.
a lot of these kids are whether ideologically trained or just trained through life, through the life that they've had to live to be fighters like that. And for her, a white girl from Kansas, I think she was from,
Oh my God.
it was just such a moment of like, what the fuck am I doing here? What are we doing here? We're kicking in people's doors to their homes, and now we're shooting kids and they're shooting us. And like, it was an awful, awful moment for her. And how many people had to come home from Iraq with that and live with that.
Right. I mean, any war, like,
Yeah.
forces human beings to do things that no human being should have to do and see.
Right. And there was something so different about World War II, and you had the GI Joes who fought these Nazis, sometimes hand to hand. My grandfather killed a Nazi hand to hand and field stripped him and kept all of his medals and armband in a cigar box in the attic.
Wow.
And that's old school warfare, you know. But he also was part of the group that freed Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. And so when you're fighting an ideology, and then you get this conclusion where you are able to free these people, it's just such a different structure as wars like Iraq and Vietnam and whatever the fuck they're trying to do in Venice. It's just such a different dynamic in terms of how you can sit with your trauma and process what you've been through if you genuinely believed you were doing the right thing and fighting for freedom and fighting for people's freedom and fighting to save a group of people who are being systemically eradicated, versus our country wants us to go protect this oil reserve.
Right.
That's, you know, and then you have to live with what you did to protect somebody's oil. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see what we can do to wrap this up in a semi-positive manner. Okay, the elections and nothing after that.
I know it's hard to get involved in any talk about vet stuff without it getting heavy, because the very essence of it is heavy stuff. And Veterans Day is one of those things that's like really complicated and different for a lot of people. A lot of people like to go out and, you know, get their free stuff, get their free cup of coffee and free lunch at what's the place that does it? Some burger place. And that's cool. Like, absolutely. And some people just stay at home all day and would prefer to not talk or be talked to. And yeah, so everybody kind of handles it differently. I wrote a piece on Medium that I think I've brought over to Substack about the concept of being told thank you for your service, and how for some of us it feels like, well, I'm not veteran-y enough because I wasn't on the front lines. And then you have guys that were on the front lines that are like, I don't thank me for what I did. That what I did was horrible. So it's a real complicated type of feeling on Veterans Day. And then it gets frustrating seeing politicians and entities and corporations just exploit it. And, you know, they love to exploit a veteran. So today is kind of all over the place, like mattresses on sale and like,
right.
Okay.
That's kind of weird and
weird.
And kind of gross.
Like, give us healthcare and give us mental health care. So for example, on my local next door, there's chatter about before I got kicked off, I saw the chatter. I have another 30-day ban. But there's a guy a couple neighborhoods over that's riding a golf cart around the neighborhood and yelling obscenities at people. And ultimately, through the conversation, his sister got on and said he's a combat veteran that was kicked off all of his mental health care, his medication and his therapy. and he's losing it. Like he's losing it, and we're watching this in real time. And then you've got, these heartless people in the neighborhood. They're like, I don't care if he drives through my yard, I'm going to shoot him. And it's just like, but these are the same people that'll say aggressively say thank you for your service if they know you're a veteran, and they claim to love veterans and they claim to love the troops. But when we come home, they expect us to be able to wipe our head like a fucking whiteboard and just go back to being normal, participating citizens, in well-behaved citizens of society. And so if there's anything, if you ever want to say thank a veteran, then do it through your congressman and senator and tell them to restore the mental health care for veterans and restore funding to the VA so that these guys can get the help they need. A few years ago, we all heard the campaign that every 22 veterans commit suicide every day. That number is up to 40.
40 a day?
Yes. So this is not, I just found that out a couple days ago, that it is skyrocketing since the mental health care has been cut off through the VA. And you also have crossover where some of these guys came home and used their VA loan to buy farm property, and now their farms are tanking. And it's just a like double whammy for those guys. So if you want to say thank you, call your senators and congressmen and tell them to get the funding back to the VA and get mental health care, and not just get that funding back, but more right. Robust programs and more mental health care for these guys who have gone and done our nation's dirty deeds and now need our help.
Right. I'm fully on board with that. So I want to wrap it up and give you a chance to talk about your stuff and talk about what I have coming up. I do want I have there are a bunch of people in my life that had to do this country's dirty work, and I am so grateful. And it is also very uncomfortable trying to think of what to say. So actually, I think what you just said is really valuable, because not every single war in history, but throughout history, countries use particularly poor and marginalized people to go fight their wars, be cannon fodder, literally.
Yes.
They come home and there aren't any jobs because people have taken them, and they don't have a place to. I mean, this is not recent. It right. is all the way back in our history, in England's history. A lot of the Industrial Revolution violence was because there are men coming back from war that had nothing to do with themselves and were acculturated into violence. So that does not do good things.
I will say that NPR ran a great piece today on veterans who have been incarcerated and what that looks like for their journey when they're asked to go do these things, and then they come home and they have mental health issues, and then they're locked up for that, and then right. they don't get any help in prison. So that was, if you get a chance to go back and listen to the spot they did on NPR today, that was a pretty profound listen.
Yeah, I will do that. I want to thank you for everything that you and your friends and anybody that you know in Virginia did to capture so many seats in the assembly, you call it? Mm-hmm. I can't remember. And get Spanberger elected, and all of you out there who did anything to help us win so much on Tuesday. I don't really want to go into what happened after Tuesday, because there's no
Yeah.
time and space for that right now, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about that later. So I know that you're in Virginia, and Virginia just kicked ass with a whole lot of badass people like you, some of whom
God.
I know, some of whom I've just heard about. And so I want to thank you very much for that. And you will soon learn what a difference it makes to live in a place with a Democratic governor.
Yes.
I actually want to try to get Maura Healey, the governor of Massachusetts, on here. We'll see whether I manage or not.
You should.
I don't know. I'm going to try. So do you want to tell people, Melissa, where I'm going to put up your QR code if I can figure out how to do it. And you can, all right, it's not there. Why is it not there? Okay, hold on.
I'm going to drop a link in the chat.
Yeah, drop a link, because oh, there you are.
$4 forever. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the one way to do it, and then there's another way to do it. Nick showed me the 2 ways to do it, and I don't remember.
Thursday, figuring out the restream stuff. Yeah.
So okay,
I'll tell everybody about that now. I'm going to be doing a new show on Thursday nights with Shane Urich from the Firebrand Project, and I'm super excited about that because he's a ranter and I'm a ranter, and so we are starting a new show on Thursday nights at 7 Eastern called the Rant Act. So what we're going to do is we're going to rant, and then we're going to give you some action items, and we may actually do those live. Like, everybody pull out your phone. That's been something that I've just yapped about forever and ever and ever, and Shane gets on here and gets people to do these mass actions. And the cool thing is, when I was in DC for the rally last Wednesday, I've always thought that should be done at political rallies, that you should get everybody there.
Some people do that.
To pick out your phone. So last Wednesday, they had everybody take out their phone and call this senator at the same time, crash the senatorial phone lines. It was great. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to be giving you something to do. Maybe we'll do it live together and, have fun with it. But so paid subscriptions always help. I have so much going on. Counterstory Media is now an official partner with Refuse Fascism. So I'm going to be going at least once a month, maybe twice, and covering whatever March rally big event they have going on that month. If you're not familiar with Refuse Fascism, they kicked off on this past Wednesday a sustained presence in DC. It's not like Occupy. They're not doing tents and sleeping there, but every single day they have action. So if you come to DC, there will be something for you to participate in every single day, whether it's in Congress, in front of the Supreme Court, marches. Weekends are obviously absolutely lit. A lot more marches and stuff going on. If you're into that type of music, Dropkick Murphys is playing November 22nd on the National Mall, a big political rally. So I'll be there if you want to come. So this is an exciting time to be able to exercise my oath in new and different and exciting and interesting ways. And we took an oath to protect our Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And it sucks that right now it's domestic, but I have been so emboldened and encouraged and just excited by the work I've seen done here on Substack and on the ground around the country, and especially in DC. There's so much frenetic energy happening that I don't know if this regime stands a chance for much longer. The American people are rising up in our way that we do. So
rise up.
Rise up.
Somebody asked about mine. So everybody, make sure that you subscribe to Melissa, follow both of us. Both of us are trying to do this. So that's my code. It's also freedomoverfascism.us. And if you become a paid subscriber, which I've kept really, really cheap at $5 a month and $50 a year, I am going to be starting a weekly Zoom with paid subscribers on, it's called Stephanie's Salon. And I just came up with that today, so it might change. Sundays at 11 Eastern, where paid subscribers will have the opportunity to just get on a Zoom where it's two-way conversation and not just trying to look in the
Yeah.
chat and talk and all of those things. So, Melissa, thank you so much for coming on. And
Thank you. I love this. We did great. Look, it didn't crash or nothing.
We did great. We're like old ladies with
The
the
technology.
the first time I'm using, and let's get to use it for the first time this week. And yet we're not. We did it, and we thank you all for being here, and hopefully we'll all see each other soon, because I'm here to build hope, which I think is an action, to build community, and to help put everything we do into context and generate more understanding. So thank you so much.
Thank you.